the 9th day of Christmas, Moose brings to me Dr. Wolfenstein himself, Gregg Gibbs, as they discuss 20 years of House of 1,000 Corpses.
Welcome, Horror Hounds, to another installment of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. I'm your host and gift giver, Moose. Today's gift, we're celebrating an anniversary, but more on that in a little bit. Today's guest is a production designer, an actor, and is best known for being the ghost host with the most from A House of 1,000 Corpses. Please welcome Dr. Wolfenstein himself, Mr. Gregg Gibbs.
Hello.
So,
how you doing?
Easy question off the top. How's life?
Life is great. Life is good. I was at Spooky Empire convention in Orlando and signing autographs, and I was dressed as Wolfenstein for the whole thing, and celebrating this year's 20th anniversary of the release of the film. And I don't really do conventions or appearances much. It's a very rare occasion, but I figured since it was the 20th anniversary, I would do it, and also because there's sort of a secret project related to House of 1,000 Corpses that's about to come out. That wasn't ready for the Spooky Empire, and which is the Halloween weekend. So I'm doing good. Life is great. I'm having a great time.
So, for those who don't know, what does a production designer do? Like, it's just such a blanket statement.
Yeah, well, it's a great title because it's really about the whole design and look, and if it's extensive, it should get into the look and feel of the film to make it cohesive. And we run the art department, so we're responsible for all the sets and props. We also sort of oversee the property department, which is sort of a separate department, but is integrated into the art department. And for House of 1,000 Corpses, I was very hands-on. Some production designers just work out of an office and show up on set, and so it varies as far as the involvement of a production designer, how close they are working with the director, if they're more inclined to be, or know architecture or art more, or they're more inclined to know special effects, if it's special effects heavy film, or it just all depends. But in my role on House of 1,000 Corpses as a production designer I designed everything you see. I mean, everything. It was very hands-on. It was very, I worked with Rob. I was the first person on the film to start the film, and worked with him in the beginning before anybody else came on, and tried to realize his vision for the most part, and also to collaborate with ideas that I had about how the film would look. And with House 1,000 Corpses, it has a very, very distinctive look to me. It incorporates a lot of things that we were trying to tap into, which is sort of subculture, Americana, sideshow, circus, freak, monsters, dark rides, monster museums, oddities, curiosities. The list kind of grows and grows.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of iconic scenery between sideshow tourist traps in Spalding's little museum. That is definitely a roadside tourist trap. You can find those all over the place.
Yeah, the museum was it was a real set. It was a real sideshow or side attraction museum. It was fully decorated 360 and had every item in it was really an actual oddity or curiosity, and incorporated lots of different collections, inspired by lots of different collections, from the Mutter Museum to the artist Joe Coleman's auditorium, so that was a great set to work on. I mean, that was just, the thing with the film is very, Rob is very art friendly and really gets into the art department. So everything had to have a look, and always, had to be rich in its look and design. So tried to, work in that direction with the film.
Well, and I think that helps everything stand out, because every shooting location, every set piece is memorable, and that doesn't necessarily happen on all films. Like, you take the Firefly compound, every you can remember, like, just a straight walkthrough of that compound, and you can remember every scene of that place.
Oh, great! Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of folk art in there that we incorporated that was made specifically for the film. I hired early in pre-production, I hired some artists to work out of a warehouse, and they produced, fabricated all the Halloween decorations in the house, all the folk art outside, the sculptures, the list goes on, the paintings in the museum. We just made everything specifically for the film out of scratch, which is never done and probably will never be done again because, of what we got away with. But yeah, I like that it does stand out. The Firefly House and the museum. And I, we tried to do that with every set, was really to try and make it really unique and different than what you'd usually see, which we couldn't rent and we couldn't, find. We had to make it ourselves.
Well, and then, like, you go down to, like, Dr. Satan's lab.
Right.
That you felt like you were in hell. And
great.
You just had, I mean, between the lighting and the set and everything, it had this, you were just instantly transported into this hellish place. And it wasn't just, oh, here's this sadistic guy doing experiments on people. No, it was an experience of hell and torture. And it was so well done.
Well, thanks. I mean, that set was even a lot bigger than you could see, than what they shot. It was a really big catacomb set that we did as one of the last things that we did. And one of my favorite things is when you walk, she finally comes in, and there's just these guys like hanging out, like they're in the waiting room or something. We cast these really, freaky looking guys, and kind of just threw them on top of sofas that were stacked and TVs and a lot of crap. I mean, the thing with the sets is there's always a lot of stuff, layers and layers of stuff. And that's because we had full reign of Universal Studios property department. We made a blanket deal with them instead of renting, little pieces here. And it's usually in films, you go to lots of different prop houses. There used to be a lot of prop houses in LA. There's very few. There's a lot fewer now. But you used to go to prop houses and find, particular things you need. You need a phone from 1972. You need, and we made a deal since we were Universal Picture. We were Universal Studios Picture. We made a deal with the property department, and they're like, okay, you can rent whatever you want, and we'll just do this blanket price, which is a great deal. Little did they know that we would use everything to get our hands on in the property department. I think we scavenged, like we would just take stuff and stack it in the corner, and we would just because we just run in there and take stuff. I mean, it was that kind of a crazy enterprise. And so the film, was filmed over the course of a whole year at Universal Studios. And so I started with Rob in like late January of 2000, and we were shooting Dr. Satan. I built that set in October of that year. So I worked that whole, I worked all the way to the end of the year. And then we were dropped by Universal, and we continued to shoot at my art studio where I paint. I still paint today. We shot some crucial stuff. And it was just an amazing experience. You know, most movies just don't operate like that.
That's insane.
Yeah. It was really insane. I mean, it's there's a lot of great stories about the film. You know, I'm sure you are aware of it. It was dropped by Universal, and you know, there's a great story about that. And
could you imagine if Universal had kept it?
Yeah. Well, they brought it back. They keep bringing it back for Halloween Horror Nights. Their Halloween extravaganza they do. It's been brought back like 3 or 4 times. They've recreated a maze based on the film. But if it was a film, yeah, I mean, it should have been. It's a little odd. What happened to it is very political. The Lieberman Commission in the Senate was going on, and they were coming after Hollywood for promoting films to kids, R-rated movies to kids, something like that. Lieberman Commission, it was called. And Universal basically had us, which they didn't even pay attention to for a whole year. It wasn't until the end of the year they finally said, you know, we better look at what you guys been doing. And then they watched it, and I was with Rob at the screening in the Alfred Hitchcock room in the special screening theater at Universal Studios. The head of Universal were sitting in front of us, and at the end of the screening, she just turned to us and said, "We'll never release this." But it was their way of sort of giving a sacrificial lamb to the Lieberman Commission, and politically being able to say, "Oh, we would never put out this kind of stuff," when, you know, there was greenlit. We shot on it was a Universal Studios movie, you know, but they kind of used it to say we have morals and we would never, you know, release this stuff. And meanwhile, they could release Hannibal with because it had Anthony Hopkins in it, and you know, he eats a guy's brain out of his head, right? And that, you know, there's lots more worse stuff in Hannibal than there is in House of 1,000 Corpses. But we didn't cost them much money, you know. So they dropped it, and then we kept making the film. We just kept working on it. It was really amazing. I mean, me and Rob, basically. We had no crew. We would bring Sid in, and you did the opening commercial. We shot in my art studio while we watched the Super Bowl. You know, it was anyway. But that's what it was. It was a really chaotic, wild ride. It was a really fun job.
You know, it's interesting to think that in an alternate universe that, you know, the Lieberman Commission never happened. Universal stuck to its guns, released House of 1,000 Corpses, and now Captain Spaulding, Dr. Satan, Dr. Wolfenstein, and some of the others are the new crop of Universal monsters.
Right. Well, that was the intention. You know, that's you know, Rob's a real historical buff when it comes to horror, and Universal Monsters to him is the you know, the peak of
Absolutely.
the great horror history. And that was the intention. He was doing the soundtracks to the Universal Pictures. He just put out Frankenstein, so he's putting out this package, you know, that included all the music in the film. And he was going to do Frankenstein and Werewolf and Dracula and Creature from Black Lagoon, and was working on all the artwork for it, because he gets really into the packaging, and, you know, all Rob's stuff is really, it's all him. And he's got such a great design taste, and he just, you know, he knows what he wants to do, and he's got his touch, his zombie touch. So he had just started doing that with them, and was working with Universal, and that fell through. And then we were going to do the Munsters after House of 1,000 Corpses. In fact, the house is around the corner from the Munsters house, and it's just below the Psycho house on the Universal Studios lot. It's still there. And we were actually trying to talk and plan about doing the Munsters, but then they dropped house, and Rob really didn't know if he had a career anymore in the film world. He already had a music career, and then he eventually did Munsters 20 years later.
As I say, he's trying to knock out. He was planning Munsters 20 years ago, and he finally got to pull it off.
Yeah. We were like that. I mean, what happened is, the full story of House of 1,000 Corpses, just because people always ask, like, how did it come about? And I had worked with him on music videos for every song on his first album. So it was, he was going solo, and he just wanted to do he's almost more interested in being a film director than he is being a musician, being a rock star, a big rock star. And so that was always sort of his thing, was, to direct and make horror movies. So we did music videos, and so he would get money for instance, Living Dead Girl we did, and which I did all the sets for that, and those are replicas of the silent film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So just to tap into his horror history. And so we had the money for that, and that was one of my early jobs with him, first job basically, where it was, we were really building sets and making things. And he would take that money and we would make 3 other videos with it. So I would build those sets, and then across from those sets, I had sets for 2 other songs on the album, Phantom Stranger, and then so he was always about that, about like stretching a dollar and kind of playing, the typical way of budgeting and making things, because each dollar that's spent on his music videos comes out of his pocket. It comes out of his sales of his CD. So he's very aware of that, very smart about that, very, aware of the finances of showbiz and where you can really stretch a dollar and make the most out of it. Anyway, we did music videos for every one of his songs. And then Universal wanted to build a maze based on his first album for that coming October for Halloween Horror Nights. And they used my designs for all the music videos. They kind of make it themselves, but I helped with that a little bit. And after that, it was, at the Halloween Horror Nights, it was the most popular attraction. It had the longest line, and it was the best attraction that season. So at the end of it, and also he was given an award. Bill Moseley was the MC for an award ceremony where they gave an award to Rob, and Bill gave it to him. And while we were making the music videos, Rob was always talking about this movie idea he had. He didn't know anything about it or what it was about, but he just had a title. The title was House of 1,000 Corpses. And we used to joke about it and talk about it like, what if this happened and this, and what if there's a house of this, and what if it was based on Texas Chainsaw? And then when he met Bill Moseley, gave him an award, I remember the talk was sort of like, well, what if I build a character around Bill Moseley, Chop Top? And then I love Spider Baby, and that guy in Spider Baby, what if I built a character around him? And so we would joke about it. And actually, one of the videos we did, I wore this skin mask that I made, this really freaky skin mask with this wig, this like clown weird wig. And I did a piece for, sometimes I mix these up, but I think it was Phantom Stranger Redux, or it was a version of Phantom Stranger, I think, or it was Spook Show Baby Redux. Anyway, I basically improvised for the whole song as a doctor on a operating table with a dummy corpse, and it was just one of those things, that Rob would say, "Hey, Greg, you're going to do it. We're going to do some doctor here." Building a set, and, within a couple of days, I had to build a doctor's room, and we would operate like that. That's how he liked that kind of spontaneous creativity, that would come with it. And I basically improvised with everybody laughing, and behind the camera this music video, this whole crazy. I just jumped around and went crazy. Anyway, you could see it in the opening title sequence of House of Thousand Corpses, and that's the original Dr. Satan. And we called him Dr. Satan, and it was kind of a joke on the set, Dr. Satan, you know. So that kind of worked its way into House of Thousand Corpses and became a plot point. I mean, there's lots of stories I could tell about that. Anyway, I think since it was so popular with this maze at Halloween Horror Nights, Rob had been talking about this film and mentioned it to Executive Universal, and they said, come in and pitch it. So I remember the day he had to go in and pitch it, and he didn't really know what the movie was. He just had the title. Such a cool title. Let's just make a movie and, you know, whatever happens. So he pitched it and made up the story of the Fireflies. And I think he even made up some of the names. You know, he took names from Groucho Marx, you know, Captain Spaulding and Ravelli, and because he loves Marx Brothers movies. And he kind of pitched this thing on the fly. Well, the Blair Witch Project had just happened the year before, and it made so much money. It was such a shock to the Hollywood system. You know, this thing made for $20,000 took in like 200 million. And so Universal wanted to tap into that, and they saw, okay, here's this rock star. He's got a solo rock career. He wants to direct a horror movie. He went and pitched it. They kind of liked the pitch. He wrote his script. The script wasn't even spell checked. It was grammatically, you know, difficult to read. I don't think they ever read that, but it came down to him telling them, look, give me $1 million and leave me alone, and I'll give you a cult film. It'll be a cult film, and it'll have legs, and it'll have its own life of its own, and it'll be in the spirit of 70s horror films, because at that time it was all 80s, or not 80s, 90s kid, you know, teenager movies, you know, and there was all remakes. There was no real original horror films. Everything was remakes, and there was nothing fresh going on.
I say it was all remakes and Scream-esque.
And Scream-esque films, yeah. I Know What You Did Last Night, you know, stuff like that, and, you know, real good-looking kids being, you know, splashed with blood. So he wanted to do something different than that, and he said, you know, $1 million, leave me alone, and I'll make it. And then he started piecing together, and we would get together and, you know, come up with ideas and things. I mean, there's so many different aspects to the film that just, you know, I think of the origin story. It was just so much, you know, on the fly and just kind of inspired, you know. But as we went along, it started to grow, and soon the budget was $3 million. And then, because we had Karen Black in the film, and, you know, and we needed a little bit more time because we wanted to make a real dark ride. You know, we didn't want to, you know, we wanted them to go on the dark ride. We weren't just going to talk about it. You know, now we're going to show the dark ride, so we need money to build that. And it kind of grew like that. You know, it was me and Robin, the first cinematographer, we went through about 4 cinematographers. But the first cinematographer, and it was just the 3 of us at the beginning, and then so it started to grow, and then we shoot, and by the time we were shooting, the budget was $5 million, and then we shot. We didn't have an ending to the film. We shot for a whole month, and that was the end of the schedule, and we ran out of money, so we go back to Universal Studios. And we say, okay, well, now it's $7 million. Let's make it $7 million. And then it kept going up, and it eventually the film probably cost around between $13 and $15 million, which it made back eventually on the opening day. But so it kind of grew like that, and then it took the whole year, and we're on the back lot with the trams going by, and the sets became more and more elaborate because Rob wanted to do something bigger, and he wanted to do something, you know, by the time we got to Dr. Satan's, one of my fun stories I love to tell is Rob wanted to do this catacomb for Dr. Satan. Dr. Satan was never in the film. She just never finds him or something. Basically, Jerry gets eaten by the zombies, and that was all. That was her first ending. So then we decided, okay, she's got to go to Dr. Satan's lair. So let's make a lair, but let's make it like massive and make it like, way over the top with skulls everywhere. And, it's like Indiana Jones, on acid or something. And so I got a call from the producer and said, we have to go meet with Ron Meyer, who's the head of Universal. I mean, not just Universal Production, but the head of Universal Studios, the whole operation. And apparently he had gotten wind of this crazy movie that's been going on for almost a year. And he said, we have to meet with him because we need more money. Rob wants to build this catacomb thing. It's going to be 30 feet high. And I done a design of it, and it was massive. And I made this little model, scale model, which I did for most of the sets, so that we kind of, was part of the process of making the sets. And he said, bring your model with you. And we went into Ron Meyer's office, this big office on the lot, a couple of secretaries, and big wide room. And while we were waiting, we could get anything, like a basic. Anyway, we go into Ron Meyer's office, and he's on the phone, and he's all pissed off, because they're always pissed off in Hollywood about something. And he eventually hangs up. We just sit there, and he hangs up the phone, and he looks at us, and he goes, who are you? What are you doing here? And we said, we're with the Rob Zombie movie. Rob Zombie. Oh yeah, what's going on? What is that? And basically the producer went down the line about what we've been up to, what we've been doing. And here's Greg, and he's the production designer, and he has a model of a set that we want to build. And, we need to up the budget. And the guy looks at my model, and he's like looking at it, like he could care less, really. Like we're complete, interruption in his day of really important movies. And he says, why do you need a staircase? And I said, well, there's this character, the professor, and he comes down the stairs. It's in the script. And he looks at me and he says, get the fuck out of here. And we just get up and leave. That was it. And the next day we got the money. And then we continued. We continued on, and I
wish it was that easy in real life.
Yeah, I created the biggest set of them in film, and it was like that. It was crazy. And then they finally say, what have you guys been up? Well, you got to watch this, and they watched it, and it was so far out there for them. For your typical Hollywood executive, there's no happy ending. The bad people win. The kids they're not even kids, they're like in their late 20s. Everything is, and how do they market it? The marketing woman, I remember the screen, head of marketing, ran out of the theater. I don't think she finished watching it. Threw up. I swear to God. And so that was a version, though, that's not the final version, because the film kept matriculating, or whatever it kept it kept changing, and once Universal dropped it, it was picked up by MGM, and they started cutting it in a different way. And then I don't know if the famous story, Rob was on MTV and said that MGM is only releasing the movie because they have no morals, and the head of MGM saw that and dropped it the next day. So then it was an orphan again. And another year and a half or so went by, and Robert would literally shoot stuff in his basement. Some of the home movie stuff was just shot in his basement. They would say to Bill Moseley, come over for lunch. We're going to shoot some stuff in the basement. It'd be that casual, So the picture, morphed and changed, and the original picture that Universal saw was a little different, and maybe was more shocking in one sense, but then Rob ended up adding more other shocking stuff to it and cutting it almost cutting it like a music video. I mean, it really is cut really fast and jumps around and inserts, and he developed his own style, just because he kept tinkering with it, and it would become something else. So the changes in the film, the way the evolution of the film is just very complex in that there's a lot of stuff that's not in it. The original story was that the kids are making a documentary about roadside attractions on their trip, like down Route 66, and they're filming, and then we go to all these different attractions, and one of them was Captain Spaulding. And then they were going to go on to something else, and they eventually end up at the house. It was always about the house, but that was kind of put to the side and cut out. A lot of stuff was cut out, so it's amazing. When I went to the theater, it was just re-released, and watched it again, and it's such an odd thing to watch because I don't know, it's like watching a sculpture that keeps changing, or that's changed from what it was before, It's something that has an evolutional process to it.
It became its own living organism.
Yes, it is. It is. There's no other film that looks like it, or in my mind, or that has that kind of energy to it, and is so unafraid to be like completely, how do I put it, aesthetically disgusting in a beautiful way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, and Rob said it in his pitch. It's going to be a cult movie, and it's going to have legs. We're talking about this movie 20 years later, and it is still gaining new fans.
I did an interview with the guy in Ireland, and he says, it gets bigger and bigger. But when we were making it, I used to say to everybody working on it, this is going to be a cult classic. This is going to be a cult classic. Nothing else looks like this. And everyone, while we were working on it, the executives, other people, producers, and different department heads would roll their eyes, just be like, they had no. When you're making a movie, you really don't know how it's going to come out. There's a lot of legendary stories of people who worked on films, and everything goes right, everything's perfect, everything's on. It's just everything goes, and the movie sucks. And then other stories, of course, legendary stories of movies that just somehow work by happenstance. Somehow they come together, and it becomes a classic. Casablanca, they had no script at the end. They didn't know how it was going to end. They just improvised that with Humphrey Bogart, saying that line. And yet it's the most, endemic, most classic movie scene in movie history.
No, absolutely. And House ultimately became the movie, the big movie that could. I mean, it kept hitting all these obstacles.
Yeah.
And it still got made. It still got made well. And to his vision, Rob didn't have to compromise his vision for the movie just to get this movie made. And, I think that is a testament to not only his commitment to the movie, but to what this movie started as and ended as. It has that cult feeling throughout the whole thing. So this movie knew, even without the, it wasn't entirely sure what it was at the beginning. This movie knew what it was. It just didn't know how to express itself.
That's a good way of putting it. Sure. Yeah. He always, Rob always said he really was not trying to do camp. But to me, it has a great element of that, and which makes it a cult classic. I think a cult classic, you need that some kind of campy, kind of like offbeat.
I say it has a little camp, but it's not enough to be a campy movie.
Yeah, it's not camp. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's amazing that it's had legs and 2 sequels, and just meeting the fans as Wolfenstein. a couple conventions I did. There are fanatics out there that are just love the film. They just love everything about it. One guy had my face tattooed on his ankle. He showed me. He came up to me at the convention in Florida, and he was like, "I didn't know you were going to be here. You're on my ankle." I said, "Huh?" And he pulled up his pants, and there was my mug, taking up his whole ankle. It was almost the size of my head.
Well, and that's insane, because, I mean, you figure this is a role that wasn't going to happen. Well, at least not for you anyway. And
that's right.
It's really fitting that you got it, considering you were the first person with Rob when this movie started. And then you became the first person that viewers see when the movie starts.
Right.
So it kind of came full circle for you. Yeah,
it really did. Originally, it wasn't the opening of the film. And also, so I didn't know that it was going to be placed there. But I mean, it was kind of meant to be in a way, just the way we were collaborating and working. We had done all the music videos and then, starting at the beginning of the film, just being so hands-on on it. When he decided on the spot not to play Wolfenstein. Rob was going to play Wolfenstein, and it was going to be a cameo. And for some reason, he sort of decided, I don't like the idea of cameos anymore. And he just turned to me and said, "Have Gregg do it." And next thing, I was in the makeup chair, and 5 minutes later, I was on set doing the lines. It was the first thing we shot, and it was the first time that the crew had been assembled. So it was shot first so that it could play on playback on the TVs in the house. Wolfenstein was actually throughout the whole film, and you'd always sort of just be on the TV. It's Wolfenstein, And so we had to shoot that first, and it was the first time the whole crew had been together. And I built this beautiful little horror host set, and Rob was going to play the role, and we waited for him to come out in costume, and we waited and we waited and we waited, and probably 3 hours we waited after it was scheduled, and it was the only thing we shot that day. And he finally came out, and just on the spur of the moment, just said, "I don't want to do this. Have our nutty production designer do it." So it was, it was great. It was great to do it. It came out the way it did. I love being in the film at the same time as designing the whole film and the look of the film, and being able to introduce the film. You're right. It's kind of a fortuitous.
Well, and now I know you have other things that you need to get done today. So before we wrap this up, where can listeners keep up to date with things you have coming out and look for information on that secret project?
Right. So, I'm just not sure if I'm supposed to mention. I don't want to get in trouble.
Don't get in trouble on my behalf.
Okay. But there is something coming out that Rob has been working on, and as far as my own stuff, I still have some things left over from my convention appearances, and they will soon be available on eBay. So keep an eye out on eBay. I have the only photo of Rob in the film. So after Rob decided not to play Wolfenstein, he later showed up after lunch as my hunchback assistant, and we went on to shoot more, lots of stuff that day. We spent a whole day shooting Wolfenstein, and yet there's just a little part that's in the film as far as, and I come back again, but it was fun when there was scenes where I was on in the house, and the way it was it would look like I was almost commenting on what was going on as the kids were getting deeper and deeper into trouble. But anyway, that's how that goes with films. Is some things have to be trimmed. But anyway, I have the only photo of Rob in as the Hunchback of, as my Igor, my assistant, and me. And that's a great photo that I signed that will be available on eBay. And I have some other items that I made. I made some special little edition stuff, because I'm, an artist and sculpt and cast stuff. So I have some limited edition stuff that I'm going to start to make available on eBay after I finish with the conventions. House of 1,000 Props on eBay, and that's coming in a couple weeks before the end of the year. And look out for some really cool stuff, including some Wolfenstein collectibles that I made, and also a couple of replicas of important props from the film.
Ooh.
Yeah. After it came out, I ended up selling some really cool stuff from the film, props like from the museum and all kinds of different stuff on eBay, and then didn't sell stuff for a long time. So I occasionally appear and promote the film, but for the 20th anniversary, I thought it was important to, really celebrate its legacy.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So look for that, and what else to look for? My Instagram page, I haven't posted much since Halloween because I got involved with another project, but I'm on Instagram too as Dr. Underline Wolfenstein, and then I got some other projects in the works that I've been trying to finish. One of it, which is a documentary called The Haunted Painting, with music provided by Ministry, who was just on tour with Rob. Yeah, Uncle Al has contributed 2 original cuts for the film, and and then some other Ministry classics. So I'm still working on that, trying to get that together, but I should promote that. And they had a great tour this past summer for the Freaks on Parade, Ministry and Rob. What else? Anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Definitely sure. I'm looking forward to that documentary.
Yeah, the Haunted Painting. It's about the Haunted Painting. If you look up the Haunted Painting on Google, that's the painting. It's called The Hands Resist Him, and it's a painting where 2 kids who are in the painting come out of the painting at night. And it's a legendary story that I tracked down all of the players in the story. It's sort of, I sort of call it the first urban myth of the web, urban legend of the web, because it originated on eBay. This is also known as the eBay Haunted Painting. And it's a great story. And I'm trying to put the final completion together. The pandemic kind of interrupted production, and so that kind of put things on hiatus for a little bit. And then I got some other things in the works. So check out my Instagram. Follow Instagram. I'll be posting stuff on that. And the fans are fantastic. I met a lot of fans just recently, and it was really great. They really there's a lot of big fans for the film.
It's definitely a growing fan base.
Great. Amazing. Well, I'll be back at conventions another 10 years, so we'll celebrate the 30th. Actually, yeah, I haven't been on conventions for 10 years. I did the 10th anniversary, and now we did the 20th. And there's a new release coming out that'll be really special for all the Thousand Corpses fans. So keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. And
yeah,
listeners, I will put all those links in the episode description, and you can find me and other great podcasters over at electronicmediacollective.com, or if you just want to follow me, head over to Facebook, Twitter, and now YouTube at Moose Media Inc. Just look for the Moose. Greg, this has been phenomenal.
Well, great, Moose.
And I would love to have you back on in a few months to hear more of your stories, because I feel like we just barely scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah. It's extensive. There's a lot of real fun history to it.
And like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to this documentary when it comes out.
Oh, thanks so much. Great. Yeah, I'll definitely keep you up to date on that too.
And can't thank you enough for coming on. And until next time, Horror Hounds, mash on.